Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Hamlee. Up next on Another View, it's all things political with roundtable pundits Daun Hester and Dr. Eric Claville. What should we expect from the 2024 Virginia General Assembly session, particularly with Hampton Roads elected officials in charge? On the national scene, who will be the number 2 behind frontrunner Donald Trump in the Iowa caucuses? And what about leadership in the Biden presidential campaign? Lots to talk about, and we want to hear from you too at 800-940-2240. Another View is next, right after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamlee. Just a reminder that this weekend is the celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King and Dr. Martin Luther King Day, and there are 2 major events that are going on in our area, among several others. But just want to remind you of the 40th annual Martin Luther King Jr. Community Leaders Award Breakfast being put on by the Urban League of Hampton Roads. That's going to be Monday, January the 15th at 8 a.m. at the Virginia Beach Convention Center's Grand Ballroom down on 19th Street in Virginia Beach. And this event has been going on since 1984, and I have had the honor of being an honoree at one time during 1 year. This year, Charlie Hill, Peter Blake, Harry Lester, Alexis Swan, Norfolk Redevelopment and Housing Authority, Governor Douglas Wilder, Nikita Doggett, and Lisa Wise Chapman are the honorees. So if you haven't gotten your ticket already, please go to ulhr.org/MLK-awards and get your ticket. And then when you finish that event, come on over to the city of Norfolk, because that city will be holding its annual ceremony in March, honoring the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. It's also on January the 15th at 10 a.m. The ceremony takes place at the Addicts Theater on Church Street, and we'll have a keynote address and also musical performances. And then following the ceremony, everyone will march to the Martin Luther King Jr. Monument located at 701 Church Street. So 2 big events going on. The Virginia Symphony is doing 2 concerts on Sunday, this coming Sunday and the following Sunday. Those are all free, but you need to go to virginiasymphony.org to register. So lots going on to celebrate the great works of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So, politics always seem to heat up during a presidential election year, and 2024 is shaping up to be no different. So today's roundtable is all about politics with 2 of our most seasoned political pundits. Norfolk City Treasurer Daun Hester. Hey, Daun.
Hey.
Happy New Year.
And the same to you and everyone.
And political and legal analyst Dr. Eric Claville. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, Barbara.
How you doing?
Wonderful.
Good. So lots to talk about. So let's jump into this. History was made in the Virginia General Assembly this week with the swearing in of the first African American ever in 405 years to hold the position of Speaker of the Virginia House of Delegates, Mr. Don Scott.
Yes.
Both of you were there, I understand. So I first want to get your, just paint the picture for us. What was it like, Dawn?
It was overwhelming, thrilling, emotional. It was, you could feel the weight on him and his desire to do well. And you just had the joy that was in the chamber. It was good on both sides of the aisle, I should say. I thought he was very His remarks were excellent. And if you have an opportunity to go back and hear it, because it is on the General Assembly website, I think you should. But there were many tears shed.
Wow.
Many
Including his. Because he had quite a journey, Eric, to get to where he was. And I read an article in the Washington Post that Bob McDonnell, who was the one who pardoned him and allowed him to be able to vote again, which kind of, led to this moment.
And they
was
met
there
for the
also.
first time yesterday.
And they met for the first time. Wow. Yeah. Your impression, sir?
Yeah. I definitely agree with Daun. The actual the atmosphere. It was a beautiful atmosphere, but it really started Monday with the reception for the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, which always is the Monday before the Wednesday of the start of session. But during that particular reception, it was an emotional outpouring in recognition of not just what this moment means, and Speaker Scott as well, but also Senator Lucas, and this being the 40th anniversary of the election of the first African-American woman to the Senate, Yvonne Miller,
Oh, wow.
as well. So, who is, Norfolk State graduate, Norfolk State professor, who passed away in 2012, of course, the forerunner for all of this, and with this being the 40th anniversary, and for those of you who are study, numbers and religious, 40 is significant, right? And then not just that, but also with the election, the election of the first African American speaker, which was unanimous, by the way. It was 100-0. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. Wow. And to see that and to experience that on yesterday, I had the opportunity to be in the Capitol to see it, to speak with, Daun at the prayer breakfast, just speak with the speaker prior to him, walking out of his office, up the stairs, onto the floor to take that. Again, it was absolutely historic. It was phenomenal. And it was a moment that I won't forget. But the pleasantries into yesterday, and the politics starts now. And to your point, Daun is to him, hats off to him, and how his story is remarkable, and it really shows the redemptive work of again, who he acknowledges as his Savior, the redemptive work of Jesus Christ on someone, and how people accept that. Now, of course, we are a religious nation, as we say all the time, but to actually walk it and to people to accept it is a different thing. Yeah. And we see that in him. So I think his story is phenomenal within itself. It's very unique. It's an example for all of us moving forward. And as we continue to work together, as the governor talks about working together for a better and greater Commonwealth, for opportunity, I think that's the story that we can definitely lead with.
So what? Excuse me. So now that, as you said, the politics have started. What are the major issues, and how do you all think because we have a majority in the House, in the Senate, that is a majority Democratic majority, and then we have a Republican governor. How are they going to work together, and are we going to get anything accomplished this year?
We're going to get things accomplished. We're not going to get all the things that we want because there are differences. Mm-hmm. So the gun issues will be a challenge. We have a lot of Democratic bills in reference to guns, and so on the Republican side, they're not going to want to get those moved. But there may be little things. But on education, mental health, they're definitely going to move something through. Mm-hmm. The arena space or stadium space, whatever, the $2 billion commitment that the governor has made, there's going to have to be some work with that because our senator has said to us that she wants to get rid of tolls. So there's going to be some give and take and a lot of debate on that. Mm-hmm. But I think education and mental health are going to be the main things where we will find some common ground that they'll be able, which are areas that we know right now in not only our state but in the country are things that are vitally needed. Mm-hmm. I hope we do a lot with infrastructure too.
What about abortion, Eric?
Well, again, the bill has already been filed which is the first step. It's a multi-step process to make to add something to our Constitution, right? And the bills have been filed for that first step in order to enshrine a woman's right to choose for her body and the life of a child that she carries into the Constitution, which is what the Supreme Court actually ruled. They ruled for each state to make that determination. So, just like Ohio did in this past election cycle, we're seeing this now in Virginia, but really all across the country. So these are ballot measures based upon the ruling of the Supreme Court in June during that session of what states are now doing. So you're going to see that. That's definitely going to be a fight within the South. But you also see the numbers on the side of the Democrats as it relates to that issue statewide. But it's going to come up to a vote for that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to take.
Go ahead, Dawn.
It's going to take that 2-year window because it has to get approved 2 years.
So it has to be 2 consecutive years that it's voted on.
2 consecutive years that it has to be voted on, and then it comes to the people.
Okay.
So government is slow. That's why it's slow. One of the reasons, but anyway, to make sure we're doing things right, that the legislation is written properly, and then it comes to the people. So then we get to say what we want when we go to vote. That's why it's important to vote.
And if I could, Barbara,
Sure.
Daun, thank you so much for explaining that, that multi-year process and the steps. I wouldn't say that government's slow. I say it's deliberate. And with that is for, as you stated, so that we get it right? Because as you stated, once we enshrine it in the Constitution, I mean,
it's there.
It takes so much to try to, it's just, hey, let's take our time. See if this is what the people want and get it right.
So I'm just curious, and not to get too far into the weeds in terms of how this works, but I am curious about this. So if the language is determined this year, and it's and it's voted on, and say hypothetically it passes and everything's okay, does the exact same thing go into the next year?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So there can't be any change of
No. If you change it, it has to start.
It has to start over
the whole
again.
process has to start over again. Okay.
Now, is this veto proof? Can the governor veto this?
The governor, I believe, can veto it. Any bill that is passed through the General Assembly can be vetoed, but then can be overturned by the legislature.
But remember,
Now,
we don't have that much of a gap, so we can't.
Sure.
We can't override any of his vetoes.
Well, according to according to the Post, I'm not saying
I just
they're
wanted
right.
to make sure the public knew this.
Right, but according to the Post, it says Virginia amendments are put to the public vote after passing both chambers in the General Assembly with simple majorities in 2 sessions separated by House elections, which every 2 years. The governor is not involved.
Very good. So then that
that's what
answers
it
that
says
question.
here.
Thank you very much.
So before we leave our local politics to move on to national, I'm just curious. What is it about Portsmouth? Look at all the leadership. I mean, it's Hampton Roads, in general, but Portsmouth they've got some bragging rights in terms of how what's happening in the state.
Shout out to P-Town.
Shout out to
right?
P-Town, right?
But it's hard work. It is hard work. We know that Senator Lucas has been in the trenches with the people for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so it's so deserving that she has reached this mark. And I believe things are God-given and driven. And so for Daun to now be the speaker, but he took over a role 2 years ago to provide leadership for the Democratic caucus. And he, in his work, hard work, helped us to get to this majority in the House. And so it's deserving that he should be now our speaker. And they just happen to both come from Portsmouth, Hampton Roads. And so I think that's a great thing. But then, I don't want to leave out Mamie Locke either.
Absolutely.
Because she has, over in Hampton.
Well, that's why I said Hampton Roads in general. We've got quite a few.
We have quite a few leaders. And our appropriations chair, Luke Torian, I was going to say Reverend Dr. Luke Torian, that's who he is, back in charge in appropriations. And for me as a former delegate, with them being in the new legislative building.
Yeah.
Okay, so as an African American, we've got Daun, I have to call him by his name. We've got the speaker, we've got Senator Lucas, Luke Torian, and Mamie, all in this new facility, and they're all on the top floors.
Wow.
Okay, they're first.
I mean,
and
symbolically,
going,
think about
the
that.
first and going. This building opened in October, but historically,
Yeah.
it's just ooh, I feel the goosebumps just from that.
And Richmond is so symbolism is such a big deal in
Correct.
Richmond anyway. That's
Yes.
just incredible. Eric.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, Daun, Daun summed it up. I mean, as we were walking through the GA, we call it GAB, General Assembly Building. As we were walking through, of course, learning the different aspects of it. And for me, I learned the old GAB, right? I got my start under Senator Locke working in the session. So I learned, I remember that building.
Me too.
You're right.
I was in it.
That's right.
I was in that one.
And whew, yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, from a health standpoint.
My first office was a closet. My
Wow.
LA was outside my door
Yeah.
because I was number 100. I came in on a special election. And so it was literally a
Literally
closet,
a
and my
closet.
LA was outside my door.
Wow.
But now,
Yeah.
every, and I might say LA, that's legislative assistant, that's
yeah.
our support person. All of them now have a window.
Right.
Ah.
And two doors.
That's the first.
And two doors, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And to Dawn's point, the 14th floor, I mean, it's African American leadership all the way around, and is for the history of our people, and the history of this country, that's very significant, and that's something that all of us, all Virginians and all Americans can be very proud of, and just not anybody, but as Daun stated, these individuals that have been public servants for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Now what we've done with Speaker Scott, again being elected 2019, but becoming a successful attorney, prior to that, and serving the people of Portsmouth, in that capacity, being elected, and now being Speaker just in his second term. I mean, that is historical within itself. I mean, that's boss style.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? So,
Right.
and then of course, we can't leave out, like I said, Delegate Luke Torian, who's for not the second time around
Right.
as chair of the appropriation that knows it, and also the record number of African Americans elected to the General Assembly, the largest Virginia legislative black caucus ever in the history of the caucus, and elected in Northern Virginia, where you have a major diverse population. And with a diverse population, individual voters in their district said, we trust these African Americans to represent our interests in our community, not just for us, but for our children. That speaks volumes.
So it sounds like the nation needs to take a page from Virginia's book in terms of at least right now, civility and the ability to be able to work across the aisle, work together. We'll see what happens because we know the session just got started yesterday. But
I just
we'll
want
see
to
what
make sure
happens.
they finish on time with a budget.
Yes,
Don't want no long delay like before, right?
Well,
And they don't either. They want to get it done too.
I don't think that's going to happen, just personally. This is the governor's first and really only real budget, and hey,
Well,
It's going to be
a
interesting
couple
to see
things
what
are
happens.
already gone, but
Right.
they will discuss it. They will discuss it.
absolutely,
Oh, gosh.
it'll be a discussion.
All right, let's turn to national news because there's so much going on. I don't even know where to start. Okay, Eric, I'm going to throw this one out to you first because I think with all the trials that are going on this week and appeal processes and so forth, talk to us about this presidential immunity issue and what happened this week. Or what is happening with Trump and his attorney saying basically,
Of course.
he can do anything.
Of course. Well, again, they have to make that argument because it's really the only argument that they have, right? So basically what took place is that the attorneys for former President Donald Trump stated that he has immunity from all of these actions or prosecutions that are coming against him because as president, he can do whatever he wanted. Now, of course, that fails. We knew that we have precedents with the Nixon administration because that was the exact same argument that Nixon made. But as Barry Goldwater told him, you have no support, and after the Supreme Court made their ruling. And this is the same thing is going to happen here. However, when you talk about the other trial, now that's the Washington trial.
That's the Washington trial.
Right. Now we're talking about let me shift to the civil trial.
Civil trial.
Civil fraud in New York.
Yeah, right.
Which there are closing arguments happening today with that. Of course, the former president wanted to give his own closing. The judge ruled and said he could not. But that's the one that he's attending. And that's the one that he's been attending religiously because that's his money. Right. And of course, with all the evidence that they have, I can, more than likely there will be a verdict not in his favor to say that he has defrauded the government.
Which means he ultimately, if in fact they find that way, then he will not be able to do business.
Won't do business in
New
the
York.
state.
That's what she's asked for.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, whether that will happen.
Okay.
Right. Thank you, Daun. Whether that will happen, maybe not, but he'll probably have to pay a hefty fine, right? Have to sell some of his properties to do that, whatever the case may be, or do some more rallies, right? Which is how he's paying his legal bills. But whatever the case may be, it's like a snowball effect, right? Because you have that, you have New York, then you have D.C., you have New York, you have Georgia. And of course, you're going to come back to D.C., come back to New York. So, and then you have the appeal process. So this is going to be something that's going to be drawn out even after 2024, I believe. But then also, prior to the new year, you had states filing and taking him, Colorado, and then Maine taking him off the ballot, stating that Amendment 14, Section 14.3 of the U.S. Constitution, stating that an actor that basically participates in the insurrection of the country forfeits their opportunity to hold office again. Now, the question becomes, has he been determined to be an insurrectionist, right? Now, we just had J6. We all saw the tape. All right, we all saw it. Some of us saw it live. The world saw it. But with that, that message, I believe, has fallen flat with the voters because the more legal issues that he has, and the more the media or the Democrats try to drive home the fact that J6, which J6 was what it was. It was an insurrection for our country, or attempted insurrection, that it fall flats, it galvanizes his voters, and his support just continues to rise. Congressman Claville, who is basically the kingmaker, and really, in a lot of our opinion, and you see the numbers, after South Carolina, he made Joe Biden as president with the support. He made a statement that he believes that the message, even after the speech that President Biden gave in South Carolina, is falling flat, meaning that it's not able to break through the quote-unquote MAGA wall of the big lie. And he's right. He also stated before the speech, prior to the president coming to South Carolina, that he believed that the White House needed to do a better job in communicating the successes that they have, because it's falling. The voters are not enthused to come out and vote. So we have that. We have this mix, this perfect storm, if I could use that, that once again, we see where this could be a very competitive election, where it should not be a very, very competitive election.
Meaning that the presumed front runner, Donald Trump, against Joe Biden again.
Right. And the possibility of Nikki Haley being a vice presidential nominee with this particular president. Right, because these are the two persons standing. You have Ron DeSantis and current governor of Florida and former governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley. Right, Chris Christie ended his campaign, I think, yesterday.
Yes.
Which, so pretty much that's it. That's what you have. The question becomes: would a Trump-Haley ticket be a formidable ticket against Biden-Harris? I say yes.
What do you say, Daun?
Well, it's going to be a formidable ticket, no matter who Trump's VP pick is, because Trump's voters are ready to vote for him again. What we have to do, and I'm a Democrat, you all know that, is to get that message across. It's hard to get the message across because people are dealing with their day-to-day life, living, and all of this stuff around them that, I said government is slow. It is slow. All of the great things that have been done through this administration, I think, haven't gotten to where it's hitting their pocketbooks or making their life better, helping them to feel better. But that's not what government's supposed to do. So we have to get the message across that you're voting because you're voting for what you want for your life and for your children. You don't get everything. We're not going to get everything. We're going to have a divisive, just like here in Virginia, when you get we have the majority Democrats, but it's such a slim majority, which forces you to work together. We have at the federal level individuals who really don't care about working for the people that they were elected to serve. And in changing that message, we can't move them out. But what we have to do is make sure that we keep people in to keep the negative from building. The lies that are being spread, even people of all genders and races are believing these lies because you hear it over and over and over again. And we have to figure out how to stop that, which goes back to the messaging. And you know me, I call it like it is. If it's a lie, it's a lie. You need to say it's a lie. But we have to, as individuals in our circles, have to make sure that we are talking with the people that we affiliate with to help them understand why that vote is important.
Hang on one second, Eric. If you're just joining us, we're talking about national and local politics with AV pundits Daun Hester, who is the treasurer for the city of Norfolk, and Dr. Eric Claville, a political and legal analyst and creator of the award-winning Claville Report. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking about national politics in the upcoming presidential election. If you have some thoughts, give us a call, 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I wanted to say, Daun, you're right. We had to have those individual conversations. But I want to push back a little bit. The national parties are just absolutely terrible at messaging.
That's true.
Absolutely terrible. And it's... To your point, when you take a look at what happened during COVID, what happened during Trump's administration, we were, for a half decade, 5 years, we were on our edge of our chair, not knowing what was going to happen the next day, because of just how chaotic it was. But under this administration, if you haven't noticed, nobody's wearing masks. Right. After this scare of vaccines, if you notice, this crash of the economy never happened. Prices are a little high here and there, but wages have come up to kind of help deflect that. So a lot of great things have transpired. But
we don't tell people. Or the Democratic Party,
right? The party doesn't
people.
Message. They're terrible at messaging. Now, the Republican Party, they're great at creating wedges, at their messaging. And their messaging is creating wedges, fear, and dividing, right? So with that, again, for a party that has the relationship with Hollywood like they do, it baffles me that they can't message better.
But in the messaging, what I'm concerned about is whether or not people across the board are paying attention to what's being said, particularly from on the Republican side, because Mr. Trump really lays out his plan. He tells you straight up, and people don't seem to be reacting to that. His base is there. We know that they're there. They, like you said, Dawn, they're ready to get out and vote tomorrow. And as far as they're concerned, that would be it. But what's happening with the rest of the country? And are we not going to get engaged until it's October, because the election is the first week in November? And I have to tell you, I try to balance all this because I'm a news junkie, so I watch a lot of this and hear a lot of the sound bites and listen to what people are saying and so forth. But when I'm talking to others out in the community and so forth, I'm getting whatever.
As long as they go vote. Okay.
That's the key, but that's the other scary part is that they're also saying they may not vote.
People are blocking this stuff out because you get tired of it. Yeah. You get tired of hearing the stuff on both sides, right? We keep saying you got to vote, and they voting, but they lying. And I'm at excuse me, I don't know if I'm supposed to do that on the radio, but yeah, we have to help people. That's why I go back to us.
Education.
I'm not going to depend on the national parties to message people that I can influence. That is irresponsible on my part. And so where I have the opportunity to do that, I'm going to use my voice, which each of us should do, whether it's in your private room or whether it's in wherever you are, to just help people understand, as we have been doing for years, why voting is so important and why the person that you vote for is so important. The world is falling apart, y'all.
So does it concern you guys that at least by polling that they're saying, particularly younger African Americans and other minorities are saying they're not going to vote this year?
Well, they're frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely to Dawn's point, they are frustrated because the promises that were made to them are simply not being completed, for them. Of course, student loan forgiveness across the board, some type of stimulus as it relates to that, and just, a few other things. However, as it relates to people not paying attention, keep in mind, in the United States, we have not had, before J6, we have not had an attempted or successful uprising, a destabilization of our nation, right? We live.
You mean since the Civil War?
Since the Civil War.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
My bad. In recent times, right?
Okay.
I mean, of course.
Because of slavery.
Right. Absolutely. Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley.
That's something else that happened. I mean, just so much every day. But, and of course the 60s was very volatile. Of course, the hot summer in the 60s that took place. So that's 64? Hot summer 64. Is that correct? Or 63? I think it was 64.
It's 64, yeah, I think so.
Where we had documented, I think, over 140 some odd uprisings. They call it riots at the time.
Right.
And then, of course, the assassinations of our leaders. But we're spoiled, right? We haven't, we say, the sky is falling, and next day the sun is shining. Oh, the economy, the world economy, which the world economy is suffering, but hey.
Not affecting us.
Not affecting us at all, right? So we think, right? There is chaos taking place in Eastern Europe, absolute chaos and death and destruction taking place in the Middle East. We're part of that as well, from stopping more from happening with our men and women serving over there and stopping a lot of attacks that could happen, thwarting them. But, we don't think about it, right? We're just worried about what's coming on demand and television and our phones and things of that nature. So to your point, why the messaging, why no one is concerned, is because it's never happened before, right? So it's not going to happen.
So we have to wait until something happens before we actually do something.
Well, we might have to have an uprising. We don't know. I don't want one.
Right.
No, I don't. But we don't know.
Yeah.
But you have to be prepared. And going back to, we're talking about the student loan forgiveness and young people being frustrated about that. Well, people, not young people.
Yeah, people.
Because we have, people my age who still trying to pay back loans.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't get people in office and enough of them who agree that is something that should be done, it's not going to happen. So if there was a House and a Senate and a president who said, yes, we're going to get this done, it would get done. But if you don't have the numbers, and we don't because districts are gerrymandered, it's a whole lot that people, they don't want to hear all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
also, but it was a campaign promise. And I think,
and he tried to make it.
Right. And he made the promise, but I think that he misstepped in execution of what he should have done day one, coming off from being sworn in. He should have passed that bill, kicked it to Congress, let them fight over it. But he made his promise, right?
He made his promise.
From a political standpoint, I think that's what he should have done.
Okay.
Let's talk to Marianne in Virginia Beach. Hi, Marianne. You're on the air.
Hi, Barbara. Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
My view on President Biden is that he cannot win again. He is tainted by the lawsuits against him for enabling genocide, since we supply all the weapons to Israel that are killing all the Palestinians. And I think we're doing a lot more harm than good when we assassinate or take out so-called terrorists in other countries and we're just engendering a whole lot more hate over there that will come back in blowback. And I feel that Biden has already lost Michigan because the Muslim and Arab American community say they will not vote for him because of his support, his unconditional support of Israel.
Okay, thank you, Marianne, for your comment. Eric, you talk a lot about overseas, what's happening overseas, Absolutely. And how it impacts the United States, and why we need to pay attention.
Well, the caller brings up a very important point as relates to young progressive voters. When we take a look at what's happening in Israel and in Gaza, and what is going to expand to a larger region. I think the administration has misstepped in not giving Israel some parameters to say, hey, no, the world is saying, you got to defend yourself. What happened with the attack from Hamas? Every nation has a right to defend themselves, but how you go about it, there are rules of war and rules of engagement. And I think when you see tens of thousands of women and children and babies being killed, no matter who you are, that pulls at you. So I think the optics are hurting him as it relates to that. Keep in mind, our monies and our weapons go there to support that effort, which means that you have the ability to say, hey, there are some stipulations around what you can and cannot do, which brings up our military. And bringing our military is over there as well, as I mentioned before, thwarting a lot of things that could cause this to spread in a larger region, especially attacks in the through the Strait of Hormuz from the Houthis that are funded through Iran and so forth. So we're not going to get into that because that's a whole different show with that. However, I do agree with the caller that is an issue for progressive voters as relates to coming out and voting for the president again, just as student loan payments and forgiveness and issues of justice, social justice for young African American voters are a major issue.
Some of the discussion also is that the Democratic Party is still campaigning like they used to.
That is true. As
opposed to adapting to more of the I don't know whether it's social media or it's just the more progressive ways of reaching the younger voters. And I was curious as to whether you think that may also be a hindrance, because we already know about the age thing with Mr. Biden, and people were saying that they're concerned about that, but more so just the whole idea of how do we appeal to other people, because we're not out protesting and doing the stuff that was done in the 60s and 70s anymore, but they're still kind of following that same rule book.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I agree.
You agree? Daun?
Well, you have to do both. You've got to take care of those who brought you to the dance, and then you've got to appeal to our young people and how because they don't look at the news that we look at.
No.
Right.
Okay. They don't look at that. That's not how they don't look at television. So,
but I mean, even President Obama has met with the Biden administration, or with the Biden presidential campaign group, or with Mr. Biden himself, about giving them more freedom to be able to react faster, to be able to do some different things to make sure that their message is getting out there. That could be just normal, what they do during the campaigns, but it just feels like there's more concern there than we're maybe paying attention to.
No, I think we're paying attention to it. I just don't know that we know exactly how to react to it, because I think there are multiple ways that you must react to it. So hearing Obama's voice, that galvanizes some of us. That doesn't necessarily galvanize even our young people today, because the issues that are occurring now totally different from when we were all ready for our president, who will forever be our president, Obama. And, looking at me at 68, I'm like, I want that man with experience who I know is going to not be the one to pull that gun versus the trigger with the nuclear whatever thing. And so, but I don't ever want to go back to the former president, because as Eric stated, every day you didn't get up knowing what was. And we were all tense. I'm still tense, but it's not to the same degree. Because I'm tense about when the next J6 is coming.
Yeah.
You got these people's, doing the swatting and calling and putting people's public information out there. My husband worries about me because he says I talk too much and what's going to come my way. But if I don't talk, if I don't say stuff, then how can you influence or at least get people to think?
Exactly.
To think. So, especially when they're not hearing it all. So we have to do it in multiple ways.
And that's the reason why I love having these types of conversations on this show, because I think that we have to continually educate. We have to continually at least plant a seed of some thoughtful analysis or whatever, so that people will hopefully go out and find some more on their own.
Yeah, Barbara, to your point, I think the issue is bigger than, of course, what's being reported.
Sure,
there is an issue with messaging with the National Party and with this administration. In part, it was the vice president went on a tour, college tour, because that was actually in response to raising the alarm. Congressman Claville, he made those statements. And so ringing the alarm, right? So now it's about engagement. How do you message and so forth? Like I said, it just baffles me how poor they are in messaging. But to your point, you have to take care of those that got you there. That's when we do the annual marches and so forth. We're going to do one in MLK, City of Norfolk. Those activities are still very important. But at the same time, you do need to be able to speak to where the voters are. Business is very good at that because business is about the bottom line. So it's just like policy. What is the bottom line? The bottom line is getting electing individuals to office that will help to push the agenda through, and pass laws and measures that will help your constituents and more specifically the country in your area. So it's the same process. However, because government is deliberate in its process, and sometimes in politics slow, that's what ends up happening. But when you talk about government itself, you and I both know that it's multi-layered, and you need individuals with knowledge and experience, but also a passion for their service, because it is public service. Yes, that you have to that we want in office that people don't see. It's that hard work behind the scenes, going through those bills, going through those, having those conversations, and going back and rewriting, bill writing, and passage. That really is the meat and potatoes of how government actually works. Nobody wants to see that.
Right. They just want the results.
That's it.
Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense in our country, found himself he's still in the hospital, I believe, and so we wish him well in recovery from complications from prostate cancer surgery. However, there were people who were very critical of the fact that he didn't tell anybody that he was going in the hospital, and as a matter of fact, two things that jumped out at me, quote, the failure to notify Congress of his inability to perform his duties was a clear violation of the law, according to Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi, who is the senior Republican on the Armed Services Committee. And the episode has raised questions about Mr. Austin's personal credibility as well as his department's overall competence. Little harsh.
Yeah.
A little lie. Excuse me, I'm sorry. A little just get your name in the paper for saying something and being negative. I hadn't heard none of them say, I wish him well. Okay? So let's start with that. I hope that he gets better. There was an issue. Could he have handled it better? The answer is yes. What we all learned as a country was that there weren't any protocols in place either. Okay?
Yeah.
So now there are protocols that are in place. Yeah, but he should have told somebody, I just want him to be better. That person just wanted to get that quote in the paper to diminish a man who has worked for 70 years, because he's 70, in his life, to reach the level that he is. And I'm glad that the president is going to stick with him, stand beside him. And if he changes his mind, I'm going to have to go to D.C.
Eric?
Yeah, trust me, no one in the Pentagon was that people that should know did not know that the Secretary of Defense was being hospitalized for treatment for what he did, for what he's being treated for. And again, we all wish him well. The reporting process or measures, like I said, there are protocols in place now. But in a time that we're in as relates to our military, and I keep mentioning this, we got to do a show about this. But our stance in the world and what's taking place, we don't want to show any weakness across anywhere, because it gives, again, it bolsters.
Okay, I see.
It bolsters our enemies' courage to actually try something that they probably should not try, right? And of course, we don't want to destabilize our standing in the world, nor those that trust us, which is pretty much the entire world except for 3 countries, right? So, that's my take on that. Yeah.
I feel kind of bad though because I get it. He is a national figure. He is in charge of this country. But at the same time, he's also a private human being. And so you balancing all of that, I get where that's coming from. One other topic I wanted to get to before we run out of time, and that is
run out of time already?
Believe it or not, yep. Claudine Gay. Claudine Gay was the president of Harvard University until last week, I believe, when she resigned from that position. I'm just curious because both of you have higher education experience and so forth. But at the beginning, the Harvard Corporation stood by her. At the end, they did not. And I'm wondering how much you think major donors may have played a role in her resigning. Major donors to the corporation.
Major donors always play a major role, period. And I, for her strength and sanity, I'm glad she just chose to resign. I, in the state of our country right now, I understand it, don't like it. And that is a part of us, not being strong enough to stand on our own values, morals, and integrity, because somebody should have just said, she didn't answer that question right, okay. None of the presidents answered that question right. As a woman, I can't stand the fact that we have 3 women who had reached the pinnacles in their careers, had worked hard to get to where they were. And because of
another woman
international situation, I'm not going to blame it on that person. She was ugly. She is ugly in her comments. I don't want to say as a feature person, but in her comments. But a woman to go after a woman is already bad. But we have now had 3 women tarnished because as presidents of institutions in which they must be apolitical, they can't get in that stuff. To bring them to a table where no answer you give would have been the right answer for either side.
True.
I'm just saying, we have our beliefs. This pain in Israel that Israel is under, and that we are seeing with the children and families, the Palestinians, it's just horrible to see. It's a life that we have not lived. They are living that life. But the women over here who have worked to get to where they are, I think it was wrong. But that is where we're going to. And that's why it is so important to look at the people that you have in office who would sit and degrade someone or women and then encourage others to do what the corporations, the donors, the givers. So we have to become the corporations, the donors, and the givers as people of color so that we can push back too and say, if you got to put that balance in there. So if you're going to stop this,
then maybe I'll stop
then
that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eric.
Well, first of all, I'll say that it was interesting that from the questioning in Congress to the person there at the table, it was all women, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but again, it shows that women have risen in power, where they always should have been and are now, working and running our institutions, right, along with men. So with that, I think that's just part of what is, but I understand the symbolism behind it. I do think that it was a misstep on the universities not to have a better, well-crafted statements. I just
kind of because they knew what was coming when they got called to Congress.
Right.
They knew what the type of questions that were going to be asked.
You don't ever know the type of questions or the questioner or how ferocious it's going to be.
Well, but
no, you don't.
Okay, and maybe you don't. But anyone who is going into a public forum, if you are. It's like you train for certain questions because you have a feeling, you know where they're coming from.
I mean, it's not so much you train for it, but
well, you should at least
be ready
on that
for it.
Well, that's my point. You should at least be ready to answer a question along those lines because you've seen what was happening before. Right. They're calling you, especially Congress, for a reason
to trip you up. Right. I mean, basically,
and it's not to be nice to you.
I mean, former delegate Hester, when the committee calls you, especially institutions at that level, the amount of influence and money that they have, spin doctors, we call it spin doctors, but agencies that were, and they have government relations office there, And again, I just thought they should have done a better job.
Anybody who does media training knows that you train the person to be able to answer the toughest questions. So you're right. The universities should have been prepared.
Right. Okay, so all I'm going to say is, excuse me, I know we get ready to be at the end of this, but even the media people that we have at our institutions, they aren't prepared for that. Okay, so they had to go outside and get somebody to help them with that.
Exactly.
And they didn't have the time to get all that set up. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, and what hurts me the most, and I know we got to go, is the whole idea of in the history books, what the one line is always going to be there is she had the shortest tenure as president. She's the first African American, the shortest tenure. Yeah. Anyway, we're out of time. Thank you, Eric.
Still might be another
one.
Thank you,
Daun. You never know. You never know. And we hope you've enjoyed today's edition of Another View. If so, why not share it with a friend or a family member? Go to anotherviewradio.org and download the podcast. And while you're there, also sign up for our eView newsletter. It is a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. I hope that you will remember that there are lots of events going on in Hampton Roads, throughout Hampton Roads for Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, but the Urban League is having their big breakfast, and then the city of Norfolk is also having its MLK Day. So come on out and support. Our theme music was an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer, and Danielle Saunders answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Have a safe and wonderful weekend, and let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.